Wuthering Waves. So, that's the big game that everyone's talking about these days. Luckily, I had the chance to play it. So I'm going to be giving some of my honest thoughts about it as someone who played a lot of Genshin and someone who's honestly been pretty critical of Genshin. This will come from someone who plays a lot of gacha games, so yeah, I think I have a pretty good idea generally what is and isn't good in the game, and what I am and am not liking. Let's just start with the gameplay, since, you know, this is a gacha game. Yeah, it is a game. Some people treat it like a gambling simulator, but it is a game above all else. And the gameplay's good. Pretty good, actually. So, I will say that the gameplay has a pretty fast feeling to it, which I think is pretty good. I want the games to feel fast. Personally, I like it when a game feels fast, so for me, the high-octane nature of the game, honestly, serves more to benefit it than anything else. I'm not really sure if this is the case for PGR, since I'm pretty sure that Wuthering Waves is made by the same developer as PGR, programs, I believe. So, if PGR is like this, maybe I'll give it a shot. But yeah, the gameplay feels really good. At least the combat feels really good and fast. Even though I only refer to the combat there, I mean to say that everything is actually good, because the traversal is really enjoyable in the game. I think that generally running on walls is really enjoyable, and I like the parkour feeling. I believe someone on Twitter phrased it. It's a good way to phrase it, because it feels very parkour-like, and it feels really good to play. I don't think I love the grappling hook as most people seem to, because the grappling hook feels exceptionally good when there are points to grapple to and from. But when using it on random bits of air for like extra traversal, it does not feel particularly good. I, at the same time, don't feel like I should judge it too quickly, mainly because even at the beginning of Genshin, there's very little stamina toward the beginning of both of the games, it seems, and stamina gets boosted in both games, so I guess that is going to be playing a role in this. Stamina is also used a bit differently in the game from what I remember, because when I was playing it, things like plunge attacks or whatever, or the equivalent of plunge attacks in Wuthering Waves, also consume stamina. Although sincerely, like I said, it has a pretty good traversal, pretty good combat. So what does it do wrong in the gameplay department, if there is any? Well, there's a little bit of actually an issue to me. Mainly in the fact that it is really hard to understand what some units are doing. Now, I'm saying this at risk of sounding like an idiot, and I'm waiting for someone in the comments to jump me and call me a moron for not understanding it. But I'm having fun without knowing what I'm really doing sometimes. But I do think it's a fair bit of an issue, which is, it is a little hard for me to tell what some characters do. I feel like I generally understand how the Sephiroth looking dude, I forgot his name, Alcaro, I assume it's how it's pronounced. I have played him, and I think I have a generally pretty good idea of how he works, along with Aoshi. But and even Baishi, I think I have a general idea of how all these characters work for the most part. But I will say, when looking at the text so I can read and understand what they do, they have the same issue that I think both of actually no, all three of the Hoyoverse games tended to have, which is they are a lot of words, and maybe they're being too much verbosity to these words. There is so much text in the descriptions, when I feel like someone could be shorten quite a bit and make them a lot easier to understand. I'm not sure if this is the case with all the characters, if they're all going to be easy to understand, but I really hope that the characters are going to be easy enough to understand later on. I already really dislike Genshin for doing that. I think Stardew actually kind of forgives that issue a little bit, but Stardew is not the same genre of game as this, so they're not even competing. But yeah, I think this game has a bit of an issue with description. Let's talk a little bit about the art of the game and the music of the game. Music is good. Personally, I like the music. Maybe they could use a little more variety of the music, because I feel a little concerned that maybe the music is going to be the same everywhere, but games early, a lot of Genshin music was like that too, so it's not really any points it's going to be docked from me in this situation. But yeah. As for the art, I really like the art of the game. And I'm not even really talking about the actual character designs, because the character designs are good. I like the rovers, they both look good. I like Tachi, she looks really good. I like Yang Yang, I think it's how it's pronounced. I'm not sure how it's pronounced. I'm sorry if I mispronounced it. I like Baiji. I like how Genshin. I like how all these characters look. I even like the dude who I wrote, Calcara. I think he looks pretty cool. Like I said, he reminds me of Sephiroth. I mean, his punching attack doesn't really help, but yeah. All things considered, I like how all of these characters look. They all have good designs. But really, for me, the actual winner of the art category for this is the environments. They look really, really good. And maybe enemy variety is a bit, the enemy quality is kind of a bit, but it's a bit, variable. Because some character designs, or some enemy designs, I mean to say, are extremely good. I kind of was a little thrown off when I saw a car moving like a spider. And for me, I was like, that is so cool. But then you'll obviously have some random things, like just random grunts, which are fine. I'm not expecting that. I'm not expecting every enemy to be like crazily designed. But yeah, no, the environments look amazing, and the enemies generally, I think for the most part, look really good, which is pretty nice, all things considered. When I think other games, like specifically Genshin, don't actually have like enemies that look particularly compelling to me. But this game, I think they did a good job of like making the enemies kind of pop out a little bit. I do want to make a note with the gameplay, which is not really, again, this is not going to be a point deduction or anything like that. This isn't a review to begin with, but I don't want people to be jumping the game for this. The game is pretty buggy right now. But I do want to, again, big footnote, more of the, not even a footnote, just a note at this point. It's big note. It's in close beta for a reason. I am hoping they're going to iron out the bugs, and I'm not going to really be judging them for bugs until the game actually fully releases. Because even though it is buggy right now, I'm hoping that everything will be ironed out, which I am going to trust Crow Games because I don't really know if I don't know what the reputation is, so I'm going to naturally just trust them for now. As for the story, this is probably the weakest part of the game for me. I don't feel particularly compelled in the story yet, but I also don't think this is something that's honestly all that uncommon. I see a lot of people judging the story and saying they hate it or they don't like it or it's boring or whatever, or having complaints about the story in general, but having a kind of meh story is kind of typical amongst Gacha games, honestly. Look at the first chapters for most Gacha games, you're going to realize how weak first chapters in Gacha games are. Like, you'll get to things like Fate's first chapter's fine, but like you go to the next stories like Okeanos and Septum, and you'll be like, wow, that was not very good. And then even in Genshin, like, quite frankly, I don't think that Mondstadt was that strong, and Leo was fine. And then going to even like Star Rail, Bellabog was quite good, and so was the Herta Space Station. But then you get to the Lafu, which is one of the first worlds, and it feels like a bit more all over the place. So having kind of meh stories amongst the first stories for a Gacha game is kind of typical. You're going to be hitting the amazing first chapter prologue starts that some Gacha games hit the ground with. Look, I think like a game like Nikke, surprisingly enough, and Blue Archive even, both of those games have extremely strong starts because they do a good job of kind of introducing you to the world and the way it works, or providing some level of shock value. But those games, I think, are more outliers, and I think there's a reason for that. Like, they're outliers because they get praised for their prologues. It's not really a rule to... Well, most Gacha games should probably get better first chapters and prologues, but it isn't uncommon. So I don't really want to deduct a lot of points for that. But at the same time, yeah, story is not really feeling super strong yet to me. Which maybe you'll like it more than I do. I don't know. Maybe I'm being too judgmental. I want to go back a little bit to the story, actually, and mention something that I think is kind of neat, which is, I kind of like the weird, like, Pokemon-like function. People talk about Pal World all these, for the past couple of months. I think that it's kind of neat to see more kind of creature capture kind of situations in games. These games aren't Pokemon copies, either of them. I think that they take certain aspects of creature captures. I don't want to talk about this controversy on my channel. This is kind of pointless because of whatever, but I think it's kind of neat to have creature capture functions within this game. It's kind of neat, and I think it's pretty enjoyable. As for the gacha itself, I mean, there's not a lot of characters in the gacha yet because it's, again, probably CBT, and also it's the beginning of the game. It's not going to be crazy filled with 92 units. But I think I kind of like the way the gacha system is working. From what I understand, weapons are just guaranteed. There's no like 50-50 with them, so it's not cringe rolling for weapons. And even then, rolling for weapons and characters has different currency entirely. So I'm not sure how they'll pan out. I'm not sure, honestly, that's a good or a bad thing. But hopefully it turns out to be a good thing, because I'd like to, honestly, see good strides within the gacha parts of these games. But at the same time, it's gacha. It's basically like core gambling, so I'm not expecting amazing things. And there is one final thing I want to talk about with this game, and I think the game has some issues. Like I said, I've talked about a lot of the issues. I've mentioned how the game has way too many words for some of the descriptions for character kits. I think the game's story can sometimes not be that appealing, but I also mentioned that the gameplay is really enjoyable. I've mentioned a lot of good and bad about this game. I do want to talk about one thing, which is more about the community than the game, which is I am begging you guys, do not call it the Genshin Killer. I am begging you, do not call it that. I feel like I'm seeing that from both people who like Genshin and people who hate Genshin. The people who want Wuthering Waves to succeed should not be calling this a Genshin Killer. That is only going to hurt your game. I am going to be honest. I have been in many communities, in many fandoms, and one thing that I've noticed in some fandoms, very prominently in the Smash community, is when a game is labeled something killer, one, you get a bunch of people to hate your game without ever trying it. As much as I know some people are going to be like, haha, yes, I'm happy that Genshin fans hate Wuthering Waves, you don't want that. You want the game to be neutral to them. Because hopefully they'll go and realize this game, maybe for them, is better, or maybe they'll find out that Genshin is better. Regardless, you don't want people needlessly hating your game. Trust me. On top of that, I am telling you that you do not want people calling this a killer of any kind, because usually those games tend to fail, because then the game to outsiders who don't feel strongly one way or the other are going to just label it as a blank copycat or a blank clone. This happens all the time with the quote-unquote Smash killers. You have a Smash killer and all of a sudden everyone's labeling it as a Smash clone. You don't want that. You want your game to succeed. Let it develop on its own and let it become its own thing. Not every game, if we were to go by that logic, then everything should be like a Puzzles and Dragon Killer, since I'm pretty sure that's one of the first gacha games in existence. But you don't see that being said. And it's for a reason. It's because it's not. This game will differentiate itself. It's not really the exact same thing as Genshin. So let it be on its own. Don't make it a Genshin Killer. Let it find its path and let it succeed on its own if it's meant to succeed. I don't see a point of calling it a killer. This is, no matter what side you're on, you don't want it to be a Genshin Killer. People who like Genshin would not want it to be a Genshin Killer because it sounds like it's demeaning to Genshin and they want to defend their game. And people who like Wuthering Waves aren't going to want to be a Genshin Killer because they're going to be known by other people who don't care about either game as just being a Genshin clone. This is a bad spot to be in. I think people should stop using those terms because frankly it is hurting everyone in the situation. So yeah, maybe you could say that it's Genshin-like to people if you're trying to recommend it to them. But please just stop saying Genshin Killer. It is not going to help. On top of that, I'll just say this now, but Wuthering Waves already has an uphill battle that's going to be climbing a little bit, because even as its reputation is a little in flux right now, calling it a Genshin Killer is not going to help the reputation for one. But on top of that, gacha games are not exactly the easiest thing to succeed in this time period. There's a lot of gacha games that come out, and there's a lot of gacha games that hit end of service really quickly. Gacha games kind of don't really have they're successful, but they don't have a guaranteed path to success like some people might think. So games that have longer histories might honestly have an advantage over it. I think a game like Wuthering Waves is going to likely succeed, mainly because I think there's a lot of people behind it. But I think that people should still hold off on making so many negative comments about the game, or just making comments like it's a killer of Genshin or whatever, anything like that. Because like I said, it already has an uphill battle, because games that are not Wuthering Waves have already been out and have a lot more characters in them. And frankly speaking, characters play a pretty big role in whether or not someone plays a gacha game or not. Someone might start playing Genshin solely because they saw an advertisement that features, I don't know, Neuvillette or Farina. And someone might start playing Fate simply because they saw Saber Artoria or they saw Iskander. So characters play a pretty big role with these games. Even a game like Blue Archive for me, it was the characters that mainly got me to play the game. I saw Saori and I was like, wow, I really like how that character looks. So yeah, like I don't know, like make sure to calm down with the comments because I think the game deserves a fair shot to improve and to continue to grow as a game and a fandom. I don't really see a reason to make their battle any more difficult for no reason. Anyway, those are my honest thoughts about Wuthering Waves. It's a good game. I think it has some issues. The issues are not honestly all that big. I'll probably play it when it fully launches. But yeah, I'm not sure. I think that for the most part, I'm looking forward to it. I'm hoping the story turns out to be quite good because for me, the story kind of matters with a lot of these gacha games. If you were to ask any of my friends, they will tell you that I constantly complain about Genshin and Star Rail's story because I play both those games more for their gameplay, and honestly, I prefer to have a good relationship with my gacha game, and not someone who's constantly complaining like I'm in an insane asylum. So I would prefer if I like talked about my gacha game with the more love and affection, like how I do with like Blue Archive somehow of all games. But yeah, all in all, good game. I'm wishing you luck in the future. Thank you guys so much for watching, and see you in the next one.